Super. I think that we're live. Let me double check the system. Yeah, green check marks across the board. I always have to check that, Dominic, because LinkedIn especially is the one that doesn't always play nicely with the we try to live stream to the group. Sorry, I got a little nerdy there, but it's one of the first things I check. Welcome to the Masterclass Conversations. I'm the host, and today I have Dominic Cummins, who is joining me. And Dominic and I just met actually a couple of weeks ago, and we had a really interesting conversation. And I think there are a lot of interesting conversations going on out there right now because of the environment that we're living in, this sort of pandemic, and how businesses are adjusting to that. And he shared a couple things that I knew other folks would want to hear. So that's why I invited him to have this masterclass conversation today. But before we get started into the meat of that conversation, let me introduce Dominic and a little bit about, so it's I want to make sure I have the name, Apex Agency Growth. I think you nailed it with the name because it pretty much tells people what you're doing.
Yes.
That's always the sign of a good name when they get it like that. It doesn't requires no explanation. And Dominic, I want to tell you, for me, you are actually an exception to the rule, and I want to tell you why. So I work with our clients and even some of I just did a free training on Friday in a different group, a webinar training. And one of the things that we teach in our program, the sort of approach, particularly on LinkedIn, is that when someone creates a profile, we call it a profile funnel, or turning your profile into a sales funnel, we teach them how to make it not about them, but about the people that they want to connect with. We feel like that's sort of a precept, conceptually at least, of how to make that adjustment, because a lot of people take this resume approach. But I say you're the exception to the rule because you have done an absolute brilliant job. Folks should actually look up Dominic on LinkedIn and see what you have done, because you have an emotional hook and it is about you, and it's very compelling. And I have not seen many people be able to do that in that form the way you have, sharing about your father.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That's a story that means a lot to me, but I will give credit where credit is due. People like Marcus Murphy and some other people in there have given me some really good feedback over the years on the profile, because you're absolutely spot on. And I love that you teach people this, because it is so critical how you create that. So thank you. I can't take full credit for that, though. I've had some good mentors along the way, but appreciate you noticing.
Well, I'll also share with folks out there that Dominic is a speaker. He's been on stages and I believe coming up even some big platforms, I should say, like traffic and conversion would be one example from Digital Marketer and folks like this. So big stages. You've done the big speaking circuit, so to speak, but you also do a lot of work in masterminds and small groups. Today, we're going to talk about, and I love your acronyms, of going from flu to well, and that those are capital letters because they stand for something. And I'm going to let you take over from there and sort of give us a little bit of background. But really, it's anchoring of we are in unique circumstances, and there are steps that you can take to be well, both business-wise and beyond. So with that, without further ado, why don't we get into your material?
Sure. Thank you. Well, and it's interesting. So how that came about was actually got asked to speak at a virtual conference, and I was talking to the coordinator, or the gentleman who put it on, gentleman by the name of Bo Harrelson, great marketer, well-known guy in the agency world. And he was like, man, he goes, do you have anything prepared for like how to sell in this environment? And of course, my initial reaction was, yeah, of course. And I thought, well, no, actually, I really haven't just taken the time to make it specific to this, because I always have lots of, like you, Tobin, lots of sales training. If you want to get me to speak on sales topics, then that's usually not a problem. So I had started to look at this and was trying to figure out some acronyms. And quite frankly, I will admit there is a high level of cheesiness to the flu versus well. But the concept is like, how do we make this memorable? Because there seems to be two questions that really come across. And you and I had this nice conversation about this. There's two real big questions that are facing everybody right now. The first one is, should I sell? And then the second, if so, then how would I go about doing that? And so that's where this sort of found its genesis. And from the should I sell standpoint, for me, that answer is pretty easy, in the sense that if you're an expert in what you do, yes, you should absolutely sell, because people are looking for expertise. People are looking for guidance. We're all looking for somebody to help us navigate these waters. And if we have the ability to help people, I actually feel like it's our responsibility to sell, to be out there to help people. And so I use that term sell more as just it's really just the monetization of providing help to people. And I'll talk about whether or not you should monetize or not, because that's a sort of part 2A, I guess, is of that question, is should you monetize? And so that was where this kind of came from. And this idea of like, yes, be an expert, be the resource, be out there helping people as much as you can, because people need it, and you should be out there. And even if you're not an expert, because then that would just turn off everybody. And I'll talk about this a little bit as we get into the factor of the actual acronym, is if I'm like, well, if I'm not an expert, I'm brand new to an industry, that's okay. The good news is you can listen, even if you're not an expert. And if you're responding to people what they're actually asking for, and you're listening, then I think you have every right, and again, responsibility to provide them answers and to sell in that case. So I'll jump into you want me to jump right into the acronym part of it, Tobin?
Yeah, and just so you know, I've been putting a couple of your words into the chat so people can read that, because I love that phrase. Even if you're not an expert, you can listen. You're bringing a lot to the table, probably a lot more than most people realize. So I love that. Love that.
Awesome. Thank you. Now I see there's chat along the side. There you go. Awesome. So yeah, so let's break down the acronym real quick. Now, obviously, in this environment, we want to avoid the flu. And let me say, I say this all with a little bit of jest. It's not a situation where I don't recognize just how serious the situation is out there. But from a business perspective, for many of us, we've got to carry on. And so I thought this would be just an easy way of putting this together. So the first, avoid the flu. The F of the flu, avoiding the flu, is to make fake offers. Don't make fake offers. I've seen this actually happen, and it disturbs me to no end, is to see people who have put out something. I'll give an example. There was one company that I saw that does a 30-day trial for their product pretty frequently, a couple times a year. They put out some sort of 30-day trial. Well, all of a sudden it became a COVID response trial for 30 days. To me, it's not right. Now, did everybody notice it? Did everybody comment on it? No, but I do believe at some point people will start to, next time you try to go to market with your 30-day offer, people go, wait a minute, I came in under your COVID offer and it looks just like this. That's a fake offer to me. And I've seen a few of those, unfortunately. The L, this is an interesting one. This is where you don't want to look opportunistic. L, look opportunistic. Now, it's not just look opportunistic, but actually you don't want to be opportunistic. And when you think about the term opportunistic, it's very closely related to opportunity. And so for many right now, you're seizing an opportunity. There's a difference between seizing an opportunity and being opportunistic. And the difference between those two things is your intent. If you look up the definition of opportunistic, and I should have written it up in front of me here, but it has to do with going after something with little to no regard for the morality of it, or whether it's right or wrong, or any of that, whether it's appropriate, anything like that. That's the idea of being an opportunistic. But seizing an opportunity, there are businesses right now who are doing very well. Before you and I jumped on this live, we were chatting about Zoom. Is Zoom opportunistic? I would say no. They just happen to have a technology that right now a lot of people are using, and they've actually done some good things around not asking for, they've given away free examples of that. So they're not being opportunistic, but they are certainly seizing an opportunity, and that's okay. So do not look opportunistic. The next part is the U, is be unengaged. And I've seen this start to take a few forms. Actually, when I gave this initial presentation for Bo's event, I had just a couple of things, but now I've added even more examples of being unengaged. One is the one where people are just doing nothing. Now, I think for the most part, we're starting to see people coming out of that, thankfully. We probably all had that moment initially where we were thinking, well, okay, we can't go to work, so I might work on the yard a little bit. I might do, we had those moments, but for most of us, we were like, oh boy, that's going to end pretty quickly. Let me go back to work as much as I can. But unengaged, some folks just ignore, like you see it on TV, the commercials come out and you're like, do you see what's actually going on in the world right now? And you're still advertising your product that way. That seems weird. And we'll sometimes hear people say that's sort of tone deaf, if you will, is an expression. The other thing is I'm starting to see more and more is just being too generic. We all got the emails from somebody that we haven't heard from in 10 years that we didn't even know we were on their email list talking about their COVID response. And you're just going, what does that have to do with anything? Because it was just too generic. It was just this obvious ploy to get their email list started back up. And those don't feel right. So just don't be unengaged with your audience. You've got to, and we'll talk about what the opposite of that obviously here is, being engaged in a minute. But just ignoring it or doing absolutely nothing, or just kind of being so generic in your, like, just throwing COVID in there because it's a trending hashtag kind of scenario. That doesn't feel right. So avoid the flu, fake offers, looking opportunistic or being opportunistic, and then the you being unengaged. So the opposite of that, as you mentioned before, is we want to be well. So how do we be well when it comes to a sales conversation? Well, the first thing is to welcome conversation. The W is welcome conversation. And you could use another term here, which would be community. And I think as we go longer into this scenario, as longer that this entire situation exists, people are craving community more and more and more, because we're forcibly out of community right now. We don't have the opportunity to go spend time with friends and family. The conversations in social media, for example, on LinkedIn, have changed as they needed to. They've changed. You see a lot more. So people are like, the conversation just feels different than it would have otherwise. So welcome conversation, get people into a conversation. And then the E is engage. And I think you and I talked about this before, and it's something that I want to compliment you. You do a great job of on LinkedIn, is you're highly engaged with your audience. You talk to them. So if they if you start a conversation on LinkedIn and they say something, you're right in there with them, talking to them about it. It's amazing to me how many people, especially on LinkedIn, don't respond. Like you'll post this great post, put a video up there, start a conversation. People will start to converse, and then you just like their message and don't respond. It baffles me. Like, it's a huge missed opportunity to engage with an audience. So that's welcome a conversation, then engage with them. The first L of well is then listen. And that's part of it. It's not just part of it. It is all of it, really. And you, like that comment earlier, where even if you're not an expert, you can listen. But if you are an expert, you should listen. There, as an example, I was in this community, and somebody said they're trying to sell a program where they double people's sales. And they said, I'm struggling right now to get people into double their sales. And my response was, is anybody asking you to double their sales in the next 90 days in this current environment? I bet you your vast majority of your audience is just trying to figure out how to keep their doors open for the next 90 days. How about you sell a program called, Conquer Net Zero? Like, right? I mean, that's the terrible name clearly terrible name for a program. But, you see the articles, like if 2020 comes out with zero net gain for most businesses, they'll have actually won. So to start talking about doubling people's sales or doing these things, that's not listening to what your audience really needs. And so listen to what they're doing, because if you start conversations, and I've seen this on your posts and some of the members of your groups, they do a great job of posting stuff out there and getting people into conversations. And lo and behold, if you're reading it, they're telling you exactly what they need and what they want from you, which leads to the second L, the final part of well, which is lend a hand. Now, I'll grant you it's a little cheesy, but the piece there is just come from it not to sell something, even though this was a sales conversation, but to offer to lend a hand. Do you want help with that? I've engaged you in a conversation. You've told me what you needed. I've listened to you. Do you want some help with that? And when you frame it that way, you don't have to do it for free. Now, there was a glut, myself included. I threw a 2-day conference for free right after all this stuff went to town. And because it just seemed the right thing to do at that time was to not charge for that conference. Next year, newsflash, we will charge for that conference. But this year we did not. And that was fine, but you don't necessarily have to do that. We grew our community substantially last week just by following the same pattern of, and we didn't do that for free. We engage people in conversation. We're listening to what they need, and then we're offering to lend a hand. Now, in all fairness, I did a 15-minute or 30-minute free lending a hand conversation. And then at the end of that said, look, if you want me to really get into this and really dig this in, like, why don't you join the group? And people did. And so, but if I had skipped through the well steps at all, I would have looked an awful lot like I had the flu. Because then I look opportunistic and I'm unengaged because I'm not really listening. I'm tone deaf. And then the offer, whatever I throw out there, essentially becomes a fake offer because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't resonate to the audience. So welcome conversation, engage, listen, and that's applicable anytime. And then lend a hand. And quite frankly, those 4 steps, call it whatever acronym you want. It's an adaptation of other acronyms I've used. You should be doing all those things anyway in your sales process.
Yeah, that's what I take away. I mean, it's a very timely discussion because of what's going on in the world, and at the same time, these are timeless. It's timeless wisdom, right? If you do these things, it's I like to say more psychology than technology. It's never going to go out of style.
Absolutely, for sure. So yeah, that's the acronyms. I said cheesy. I did not deny that from the very beginning that they were cheesy acronyms. But
well, one of the big takeaways that I got, Dominic, is that it's a valuing of the relationship. So when you're in that flu state of mind and you're taking steps that you described there, the ones to avoid, you're not really treasuring that relationship. It feels very transactional, and what can I get out of it? Whereas when you make that shift to the wellness, you're now you're playing the long game with people.
You are, and you think, so as a salesperson, we were probably all taught at some point or another about building rapport. And if you read most of, it's really interesting to me, and I do soapbox this a little bit, so I'll keep this quick. But the version of if you look up the definition of rapport, again, I don't have it in front of me, but it has something to do with a deep, meaningful relationship. Based on common bonds and common outlook and goals and such. But then you look, that sounds great. We should build rapport. If you read most sales books, will tell you try to build rapport in a sales conversation in less than a minute. I don't know how many deep, meaningful relationships I've ever built in a minute. You have immediate connections with certain people, but usually not in a business environment. That's usually done through some level of conversation. And so it is the long game, but the best sales come from the long game. Now, can you follow this pattern and do it in one conversation? Yes. But sometimes does it take longer depending on where they are? Yes. But the fact that you're listening, and if they are really needing something, then great. Go ahead and offer to lend a hand. That's okay. But you're trying to build relationships for long-term value. And it's, Jay Abraham stuff. But yeah, you can go acquire new customers, but the bigger thing comes from getting them to spend more and spend more frequently, right? So that denotes 2 of the biggest levers for building a business, according to at least Jay's works, are involve your current clients, which would involve that you had some level of relationship with those people. So it's applicable anytime.
I want to shift gears for a second, Dominic. If we could talk about tell us what's going right in your business right now. I'd love to hear a little bit more. And the second part of that is what's going right, and then how are you different? Because I think that is really interesting. I think people appreciate hearing a little bit about how you differentiated for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So what's working really well right now is, to be honest, is just to listen and engage with people. That is the thing that's working. So like you, I have a group where people can join. It's a free group. We just talk inside of there and get people to converse. And then as they have questions, we'll take that offline and offline, such as it is, and talk to them and get them into a chat sequence, and then offer them usually to book a 30-minute strategy session, which of course everybody knows is a sales conversation. But my goal there is to actually give you 30 minutes of value, and or 28 minutes. So I have 2 minutes to tell you what we're offering. But it's interesting is that if I go with that, because people will write out that, like, I know you want to tell me about your program and I want to hear about it, but I really got this. Hey, listen, don't stress that. Like, it's okay. Like, let's deal with your, you'll want to know more or you won't want to know more. And it's fine. Like, and I'll just go in, but it frees up my mind because we're so focused on our ultimate goal, which is find and fulfill people's purpose, like help them find and fulfill their purpose. If that's my purpose, which it is, then it's all about the long game. And the 30-minute conversation ending in sales or not ending in sales is really kind of irrelevant because I'm still living out my purpose. So that's been working really well for us. Inside of the community, we've doubled down on for our mastermind members. They asked for a happy hour, for instance, which sounds to me at a superficial level, like ridiculous, but they love it. They're like, this is my favorite part of the week now because it's so stressful all week. And then just to know that Friday afternoon, we're going to just have I just have to be done by that time period so I can have a cocktail or whatever they could choose to drink and be with the mastermind group. It's amazing what it's made. And everybody in our group is up. Is either level, I should say, or up, which right now level is up in some regard. And so little things like that, those are what's been really working because we just listen. Now, is it easy for me to carve away time from my family? I've got a 3-year-old son and teenage daughter. No, but that's what they needed. So listen and lend a hand, right? Jump in there. And if we get on for a call for a cocktail and that's what they need, then great. So those are the things that have been working. As far as what's differentiated, I think the brutal honesty from myself and my business partner, Doug, or I think what is a big differentiator and really helps. So when we do something where I've floated a couple offers during this period and they have not gone well because I probably didn't do a good enough job of listening and engaging with our audience. And so you float out an offer and it tanks. I'm the first to admit that inside of the group. Hey guys, I just want to let you know I threw something out there to the free group. It totally bombed. Here's what I did wrong. And what I've noticed is it's funny how many people have told me, don't be honest like that. Like people are buying into your mastermind because they want to see you as the expert and you've got to represent the front and all that stuff. And I'm like, that's too exhausting. I have no time for that. Like I can't put on that. I can't put on the airs of like, I don't know. I've been this way when I was a sales leader, when I was still in corporate America, is I figured they already know that you made mistakes. They already saw it. So why not just own it? And I think that's led to where that has led to is an honesty in the group. And a lot of our testimonials, it's funny when we shot some testimonials in January when we were all together, everybody said where I didn't think they'd go with their testimonials was they all were like, oh, and I love the honesty in the group because everybody's just so open. So then I feel like I can share like, yeah, actually, you know what? I struggled to make payroll last week. Oh, cool. Well, let's talk. Not cool, but I mean, let's talk about it. Yeah. Versus these environments, and this is, I think, good for everybody to think about, is if you can open up and be honest with your communities and your groups, they will do the same in return. And when we all achieve that level of honesty, we can actually grow. Because when we're putting everything down and pretending like, oh, yeah, no, it's all awesome, everything's rosy, nobody's learning. Nobody's picking up anything from that. And so that's that opportunity. So sorry, I may have gone a little bit longer winded on that than I meant to, but it's just, I'm passionate about that topic of vulnerability and honesty will always pay off in the long run because that's what you want out of your groups in return.
Well, it's one of the things that made an impression on me about you, Dominic, that you are a group or a community leader, and you recognize and speak to the point that all of us together are smarter than any single one, and that you didn't have that deep need to sort of be seen and validated in front of the group. In fact, you shared a story, we won't get into the details, but one of your members who brought something forward and you said, you know what, you're right. You did this better than I did. And I've learned from you. And I think that also speaks a lot to the environment that you've created for the members for it to be a strong and unmasked environment. We don't have to put on that mask of, we're perfect, we're the authority kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, just as a quick thing, for your audience, the basic premise of it was she had pointed out to me on a sales thing, and again, I'm a longtime sales leader. She was like, I don't know if you're approaching that correctly, and I readjusted my mindset. Interestingly enough, I had a conversation with her one-on-one last week, very end of the week. no, excuse me, over the weekend. And she actually said to me, she goes, man, we brought in some new people in the group. She goes, I'd love to know, what are you doing? I was like, I'm doing what you told me to do. And she was like, awesome. Like, and she goes, oh, I forgot about that. And I was like, no, you readjusted it and made a difference. And it like literally put a spark behind our bringing on new members. And you think in terms, like, if I had not been open to that, I would have missed opportunity, massive opportunity. But we can learn from everywhere. And that's what's so great about life in general. And if there is a silver lining to this situation, it's an opportunity for us to learn at such a deeper level from one another right now, is because we have to focus in and we've got to take input from everywhere. We can't have that ego suppressing us right now, or pulling things back, because this is not the time for ego.
100%. So I want to start to wrap up, Dominic, just to be respectful of your time, the folks that are going to either have joined. We've got several folks that are with us live and folks that will pick up the replay as well. If someone would like to enter your world, what is the best doorway or portal for that? Where should they meet you? What should they be looking for?
I think probably the best way is right on LinkedIn. Honestly, that's where I put the most content out. We do have some free Facebook groups and some other things, but you can find all that information through my LinkedIn profile. It's where I'm probably most active. It's where you and I got to meet, is through LinkedIn. So yeah, look me up on there. I believe my LinkedIn handle at the end of the LinkedIn / whatever is Dom Cummins, DOM Cummins, CUMMINS. But you can look up Dominic Cummins. I don't think there are too many of us on LinkedIn. And I'm in the Los Angeles area, if that helps any. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, it's probably the easiest, simplest way to get a hold of me. And I'm always on there. Love conversation, obviously. Love listening. So feel free to reach out.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing. I know you kind of reworked a little bit of your process to make it fit the flu to well format. But again, when you shared it with me, my comment was, this is a now conversation. We need to do this now and get it out, because I think it will give some people just a different perspective on trying to navigate. And like you said, the big questions are, should I be selling? Yes. The answer to that is yes. If you're actually bringing value to folks, they need it more than ever. And then how do I do it? And I think, this was the conversation we wanted to have this morning. So appreciate you taking the time to share that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to you. Thank you to your audience for hanging in there and listening to us. And I really appreciate being a guest. And it was awesome. It's fun to always talk about this stuff. So thank you very much.
And one quick note for folks out there. So in our community, we have the LinkedIn group, the Expert Referral Network. Dominic is a member there as well. We have a big announcement coming. I'm not going to tease it. I'm not going to say any more than that, other than some big changes, good changes, stuff that we're super excited to share with you. We're doing all the Q&A testing, have been this past week, this coming week, and next week. We will be announcing that, releasing more to the public. Why next week? Because Monday is May the 4th. Be with you. It's Star Wars Day, which is my company, my corporate entity is called Must Try It Media. This was something that I did before I joined the partners at SalesMap, and we launched on Star Wars Day. So it's sort of been since I was a little kid, an important date, and we try to do fun things on that date. So keep an eye out for some exciting news coming from the Expert Referral Network.
That's awesome stuff.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll cut off here, and we'll see you on our next broadcast.